Hi everyone, George here and welcome to a new video from the GFS gallery all about how to take better photos with your smartphone of your aquarium. A little bit of background about my own photography journey. I started writing for Practical Fish Keeping magazine in 2006, and rather than relying on them to supply images for my articles, I thought it'd be great to supply my own images. So I bought a very cheap and basic DSLR camera at the time. It was a Canon 10D, which was only 6 megapixels, no video function, very basic. But it was good enough to create nice photos, good enough to be published in magazines and various books for other publishers, etc. So moving on to the last few years, smartphones have really advanced, especially in their cameras and their processing power. And that's why now, the vast majority of my own Instagram photos and social media photos are taken with my iPhone. In fact, here it is. It's an iPhone XR, and you can use any smartphone with a camera and you can apply these techniques that we're going to use today. Very, very basic techniques, no special lighting, no special tripods. In fact, let me show you the tripods that we're going to use today. Just a very basic small tripod. This is the Joby. You can get much cheaper versions on Amazon, etc. And it has a dedicated phone holder here. And then if you don't have access to a large tripod to mount your Joby, you can mount it on a chair. What I like to do, and this is what I used to do back in the day before I invested in an expensive tripod, I used an ironing board. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set up the shot with my phone, take you through the whole process, and then I'm going to upload it to Instagram. And so check that out at George Farmer Studios and see what you think. And then I'd also like to encourage you guys to take this opportunity while a lot of us are staying at home a lot more often, a lot more time at home, to practice your own phone photography skills, maybe using some of the techniques that you may have learned during this video. And then drop me a comment below, what is your Instagram account? And then maybe use some of the lessons, take some photos, tag me in, and I'll check them out, and other people reading the comments can check out your Instagram accounts as well. And let's just share the photography love of aquariums. So let's get the shot set up. I'll take you through the whole process, and yeah, hopefully you guys can enjoy the video and learn something as well. So first thing I'm going to do is just set up this ironing board at the right height. And then get my Joby tripod and phone. Now the reason we use a tripod is to avoid camera shake. While that shutter's open, if there's any movement, you're just going to get image blur. So it's really important to be as steady as we can, and that's why tripods are really helpful. So really quite simple. Another top tip is clean your lens. So lenses they normally have a very hard glass, so I normally just use my shirt to clean the lens. If there's any kind of dirt or grease on there, that's just going to blur the image as well, so it's really important to give that a quick clean. We mount our phone on the tripod like so, and then I just use the basic iPhone camera app. I'll put do not disturb on so we don't get anyone interrupting us, and then select the photo mode. Okay, so now it's a case of making sure that your camera is completely square to your aquarium. So we can just adjust the tripod like so. And the top tip is just to look at the tank, and you can see the side glass. If they're equidistant each side, you know that the camera is dead center. And just try to make it as level as you can. I mean, you can adjust it slightly in an app. And then there we have our shot kind of set up. Now, other top tips to bear in mind are avoiding any reflections, etc. So you might need to close some curtains or shoot in the evening or first thing in the morning when there's no ambient light. It's actually a little bit underexposed. This is kind of the brightness that I'm seeing this phone at now. So we need to boost the brightness slightly. So what we do is we tap on the screen to get the autofocus. There we go. That also sets the exposure. And then what you can do is lock it. So you tap it and then hold your finger down, and then you can slide up and down to get the exposure. And that also locks the autofocus. So you want to get the nice exposure, so the highlights are nice and bright and the shadows aren't too dark. So it's all a bit of a balancing act. So it's actually a little bit too bright. Let's just focus on the screen properly. So if I press the shutter now, I've just moved the tripod slightly. So what we can do is set the timer, the self timer, so we don't actually touch the camera while it's taking the photo. So we want to do it on a 3-second timer. We're absolutely square. We could probably go in a little bit further. Let's put the autofocus on here. So we're completely square now. It's a little bit dull. So let's just do the exposure again. Tap in the center, slide it up a touch. That's about right there. Now we press the shutter release on here. And it's taken a load of pictures and we can select our best one. So check out the pictures there. So there's a very straightforward and basic and easy way to get a full tank image of your aquarium using an ironing board and a small tripod. You can buy much bigger tripods with the phone adapter fitted, but I really like the small tripods. These are, you can travel around with them, you can bend the legs, attach them to things, so really versatile, and I recommend you do buy one of those if you want to get more into aquarium photography. Some other tips to bear in mind: the more light you have above your aquarium, the better the image quality will be. When you use the camera app in your phone, everything is usually automatic. So without going into too much detail about how to control aperture, shutter speed, ISO settings, if you just use the full auto mode on your camera, you should be okay. You can adjust the exposure, like we said, just by tapping on the screen and then sliding your finger up and down. That's for the iPhone. I'm not sure if that's the same thing with Android, but it's really important just to get that exposure right. The exposure is basically how bright the whole image is. And you want to balance, like I said earlier, the shadows and the highlights. The highlights are the brightest part of the image and the shadows are the darkest. Some cameras will have built-in HDR mode, which balances the shadows and the highlights for you. You can turn this on and off, and I'd recommend you try that and see what results you get. There's HDR modes in various apps as well, so have an experiment to see the results and see, you know, what suits your own taste. Other top tips are, apart from getting as much light on the tank as possible, I mean, I actually did a full tank photo shoot with my SLR camera on this, and I actually used another twin star light above here to get maximum light, and that just gives me the sharpest image, the biggest depth of field, which is everything being in focus from the front of the aquarium to the back of the aquarium. Faster shutter speed, which means the fish are actually sharp, they're not blurred as they swim up and down the tank. But these are kind of more advanced techniques that we can go into perhaps in another video. Let me know if that's something that interests you. Other top tips, like I said, minimize ambient lighting. For example, I've got 3 aquariums behind this aquarium and all those tank lights are switched off. Otherwise we'd get reflections in the screen. You can buy cheap, big black or dark blankets that you can hang up behind the aquarium. It's all about kind of focusing all the light that you can on top of the tank to illuminate everything as bright as possible, and then you're going to get the highest quality image. The tripod minimizes any camera shake, which will end up being blurred, and just really take time on composing the shot. You know, if you're taking a full tank shot, make sure it's dead center, dead square. You can manipulate the image slightly in an app, but better to get the best result you can straight away from the camera, and there's much less work to do later in what we call post-production. So that's a basic guide on how to take a full tank shot. Let's talk about some techniques on how to take close-up images. Okay, let's get some close-up shots. Now, one of the great things about glass is that you can slide your phone along the glass, obviously hopefully not touching the lens right against the glass, otherwise it can scratch both the aquarium and your camera lens. I have a case on this phone which prevents that from happening. So let's just compose the shot. I really like this Limnophila hyperoides there. We'll go for like a triangular composition. Just move the camera up slightly. We can see the reflection at the top there. That looks beautiful. That wood is kind of in the rule of thirds. You can actually see the grid. There's actually a grid here which gives you an idea of the rule of thirds straight away. So we can line that up with the wood. And then we can line actually the surface of the aquarium water with the wood, and that actually gives us a really beautiful composition. So now I can just set the exposure again, and the autofocus. So let's focus on this bit of linoleum filler here. So just tap there, and then we can get the exposure to what we want. So balancing those highlights and the shadows again. And then we can just tap the photo. No chance of any camera shake because the camera's resting against the glass. So there we go. Really happy with that. And then we can zoom right in and see if everything's in focus. That's great. Okay, let's try and get some fish photos. Now it's relatively difficult to get high quality fish photos with the phone because the fish tend to move around so much. But if you can just be really gentle, don't move around so much to scare the fish, and then almost wait, get the composition you want and almost wait for the fish to swim into shot, that's probably the best way. Here's a glow light tetra here. So we need to get him in focus. So we can just tap him like that. He's moving around a bit too much, so we're just having to be patient, wait a bit longer. Sometimes you can just gently encourage them into the shot. Move over across a bit more. The fish all seem to be a bit camera shy today. Here's one now. So let's, oh, he's still not in the shot, come on. There he is, okay. So it's a little bit overexposed, so let's just drop the exposure down a touch. There we go. There we go, nice and sharp. Top tip when you're taking fish photos, try to make the eye as sharp as possible. Okay, here's a glow light tetra staying relatively still. So if I just offer up the camera really slowly, not to spook him. And there we go. Tap on him. Get him in focus, hopefully. And then away we go. Exposure looked pretty good there without adjustment, so I'm happy with that. Another top tip is if you can compose the fish so it's about a third of the way into the shot swimming into open space, this can look really effective as well. Okay, finally I'm going to show you how I just take a very quick photo for Instagram without much preparation. First of all, select the square mode on the phone, compose the shot as well as you can. This area of the tank is looking beautiful. Get the exposure right, set the autofocus, just tap on the screen, hold it and slide. And then hold it as still as you can, tap the shutter, and there we go, looking good. Okay guys, there you go, a quick guide on how hopefully you can get better aquarium photos with your smartphone. Don't forget to drop me a comment below if you've got an Instagram account, and hopefully you can upload some images taking maybe some of these lessons into account. Just to summarise on a few points, get as much light above the aquarium as you can for the photos. This is going to give you the best image quality. Invest in a tripod, whether it's a small or a large tripod, but it's really important to minimise any camera shake. When you're taking the photo, just try to compose it as best you can. If you're using a full tank photo, just make sure it's super square, make sure everything is centralised, etc. If you're taking photos of fish or any livestock, try to get the eye as sharp as possible. Think about the exposure. So this is how bright the image is, and don't forget to balance those highlights and shadows. Experiment with the HDR mode on the phone if you've got one, and also in any apps that you may be using. So I hope you enjoyed that. Had real great fun making it. I hope everyone's well and safe. Take care, keep on scaping. Cheerio.